42. Bilaspur Icam. On 12th February 1957, the third camp commenced at Bilaspur. Compared to the last two camps, things were moving smoothly because now the devotees and the volunteers were accustomed to bear hardships. At around 3 a.m., Gurudev would go to the store, wake up the store in charge, and when the stove was lighted, he would himself stop the tea for devotees and volunteers. By the time the tea kettle came to a boil, all the volunteers would be woken up, and after having their tea, they would be ready for their duties. Pragji Bhai and Babu Bhai would first start off the noon meal and then go around the camp with a stick and torch. Once in a while, on their early morning round, they saw a black shadow at some distance. They threw the light at it and ordered the person to stop. When they ran and caught up with the shadow, they found out that it was Gurudev in person. He told them jokingly, "I was testing your security arrangements." Harshad Bhai was in charge of the inquiry office, and like other devotees, Gurudev took personal interest in his well-being. Every morning when he came to Gurudev for pranam, he would be given a handful of shakkar para and chevda. This personal touch moved Harshad Bhai so much that he would be ready to do anything for Gurudev, like a child obeying his parents. Once, during his early morning round, Gurudev found Harshad Bhai still asleep, and playfully he removed the mouthpiece of the microphone kept there for making announcements. Next day, when he went to meet Gurudev, Harshad Bhai was very much upset by this loss. Gurudev asked him, "Harshad, how can the mic be stolen when you claim to remain awake for the whole night?" Harshad Bhai asked for forgiveness for this lapse, and this news of Gurudev's nightly vigil over them spread throughout the camp, and the volunteers became more alert in their duties. In the community kitchen, Gurudev used to lend a helping hand and occasionally to demonstrate to the others the dignity of labor and physical service. Every night, Ranchoddasji took instructions from Gurudev regarding the next day's cooking program. Gurudev, before deciding about the quantity of food to be prepared, would ask about the day's surplus, and to avoid wastage, he would instruct him to prepare less accordingly. It was customary to serve shira to patients for 3 days after operation. When additional patients were operated upon, the kitchen in charge asked for permission to prepare more, but Gurudev replied, "No, cook a little less." Strangely, with his Annapurna Shakti, Gurudev could manage with lesser quantity of shira, while the number of patients increased. In a similar manner, wherever Gurudev undertook works of social welfare, the goddess of food, Devi Annapurna, would go there to supplement human provisions and make the undertaking a total success. Once, during the camp, sudden heavy torrential rains interrupted the work. Volunteers were running around to shift patients from open tents to permanent structures. At once, Gurudev came out from his room and, shaking his cloth all around, said, "What is all of this?" In a little while, the rain stopped, as if it had been started on his orders. Omkar Bhai, who had gone out of the camp and returned the next day, reported that excepting the campsite, the entire Bilaspur region had incessant heavy rains, and on account of the same, the truck bearing firewood had to struggle for several hours to reach camp. Thus we see that though Gurudev never used his powers to perform miracles for cheap publicity, he would not hesitate to use them for protecting the welfare of the people. With 2,791 operations, the camp concluded on 24th February 1957. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 43. Gurudev's Humility and Service of the Unfortunate. After the Bilaspur camp, the devotees and Pujya Shri went on a pilgrimage to Jagannath Puri. While they were there, for all the 5 days, sadhu bhojan and dinner for the poor and the needy were organized. there were many unfortunate people in the town who were afflicted by leprosy. They would come in large numbers, while the food available was limited in quantity. However, Gurudev told the volunteers to cover the food containers with a thin cloth, and then he spread over it his hands in blessings. It appeared as though with these blessings, the Devi Annapurna made these containers of food inexhaustible, whatever be the number of diners. One of the diners was not satisfied, despite having been served several helpings of vegetables. Gurudev came along and emptied the entire kamandalu in his plate, and he was all at once satisfied. Pujya Shri said, "We have to keep on serving until the diner is satisfied." After the bhandara, sitting under a tree, Gurudev addressed the devotees. Be kind and compassionate towards these unfortunate people, and pray to God that you may never be tempted to do such evil deeds that it may bring upon you the resultant punishment and suffering that these people are undergoing. On the last day of their stay, all the Mahatmas were given gifts of clothes and cash. From there, at the persuasion of Bhimji Bapa, they went to Calcutta, where they were camping in a forest in Dakshineshwar. They visited the ashram of Swami Shri Ramakrishna Paramhans. His room contained a cot and a mattress littered with flowers. The mild and pleasant scent of the burning incense was permeating the room, reminding all that the saintly lives are for sacrificing themselves, like the burning agarbatti, for public welfare. The walls were lined with pictures depicting various incidents in Swamiji's life. Pujya Shri remarked softly, "Paramahansji had the darshan and samadhi in this very room. For him, attainment of samadhi stage was just as easy and natural, like switching an on and off of a lamp." When some devotees showed him photos of Swamiji and Vivekanandji, he responded with a smile, "I have seen them and spoken with them often and at length." From Calcutta, the group went to Ayodhya via Jharia. Pujya Shri stayed in the camp of Shri Tapaswiji. Later, after sending all others to their lodgings, he told Hari Charan Das-ji, "Come along with me and just quietly observe whatever happens. Do not interrupt." In the Khak Chowk, Pujya Shri did a strange thing. Unknown to anyone and without revealing his identity, he sat among the group of Mahatmas who were gathered there in the chowk. The local Mahant asked Gurudev, "Mahatma, where do you come from?" He requested Hari Charan Das to come and sit near him instead of on the ground. His second question to Gurudev was, "While in Chitrakoot, where do you stay?" Without revealing his identity, Pujya Shri replied truthfully, "I stay at Janki Kund, in Paramahansji's ashram." Thus being led on, the Mahant said, "O Lord, I have been there. Paramahansji has not left the work of management in competent hands, and there is no adequate arrangement of firewood and water for the visitors." Meanwhile, another sadhu came along and offered his reverential pranam to Gurudev, and asked with surprise, "Why are you sitting on the ground?" The surprised Mahant asked the newcomer, "Who is he?" The sadhu replied, "Strange that you would not recognize him. He is himself the Paramahansji of Janki Kund." Gurudev told the sadhu, "You have spoiled all the fun and games. I was listening to the praises of our ashram." The bashful Mahant asked for forgiveness and offered his pranam to Gurudev. At the time of departure, Pujya Shri gave a handsome gift of cash and then went over to Mani Ramji's ashram. From Ayodhya, they went to Chitrakoot. Truly, the devout devised all devotional things. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 44. The Miraculous Cure of Cancer. In 1957, Dinubhai's wife, Jayaben, caught a severe pain on the right side of her throat. Within 15 days, a tumor-like swelling had appeared, and the throat was so constricted that she could hardly swallow 6 to 8 ounces of water per day. Her weight was down to 71 pounds. In the Tata hospital, it was diagnosed as cancer, and the operation of the same was considered very risky. After the diagnosis, Dinubai wired to Gurudev at Chitrakoot. "There is no chance for Jaya's survival. If you would kindly permit, I would like to bring her to Chitrakoot for your darshan." Gurudev promptly sent a reply, "Jaya does not have cancer, and even if it is cancer, I am its censor." On receiving permission, Dinubai reached Chitrakoot at 11 p.m. in the night. Pujya Shri took Jayaben to his cave, where a coal stove was burning. He examined Jayaben's throat with a torch and said, "Jaya, your cancer is gone," and told Dinubai to take her temperature. This was found to be above 104 degrees. Gurudev told him, "Let Jaya rest for the night. After sunrise tomorrow, take her to the river Mandakini and let her sit in the water in such a position that her tumor is immersed in the water. Ma Ganga will wash away her tumor along with all her sins." Dinubai tried to protest. "But Bapu, immersion in cold water with such a high fever?" Gurudev said, "Do as I tell you. Now the entire responsibility is mine." As directed, Jayaben was taken to the river every day and made to sit as instructed. Slowly, both the fever and the tumor receded. After the bath, she was taken to the temple for darshan, and then to Gurudev for daily pranam, and then she would sip the milk sent by Gurudev. Finally, when she was returning to normal, Pujya Shri himself cooked dinner for Jayaben, who was in rapturous joy. Gurudev said, "Stay for another 8 days, and leave only when you are able to chew betel nut." After 8 days, Gurudev himself gave a piece of betel nut to Jayaben as promised. Due to the grace of Gurudev, the incurable and grave disease, cancer, got cured. Today, at the time of the first Gujarati edition's publication, after 14 years, Jayaben is hale and hearty. After the Ram Navami celebrations at Chitrakoot, Gurudev, along with the saints and Mahatmas, went to the Kumbh congregation at Ujjain. There, under his supervision, a Bhandara was organized for the whole month, and nearly 6,000 Mahatmas used to come for the prasad. On the Purnavati day, the Mahatmas were given gifts of cash and clothes. After the Kumbh, Gurudev, desirous of peace and solitude, stayed in a small village called Binaganj. The place being remote and small, people did not recognize him, and he used to get the much needed rest, away from crowds of adoring devotees. He used to sit near the village well with a few indigenous medicines and gave them to the simple villagers having some illness. When people got a surefire cure, they started flocking to him in large numbers from adjacent villages as well. Someone recognized him as the same Babaji who had organized the Guna icam. Now, thus once again getting crowded, he entrusted the work of dispensing medicines to Chanduben and returned to his kutir for solitude. Guru Purnima of that year was celebrated with the organization of a Bhandara in that village. In Binaganj, they have kept a photo of Gurudev in the room where he used to stay, and devotees offer their reverential pranam before the photograph. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 45. Mansar icam. With the first operation performed on 29th October 1957, the fourth eye camp commenced at Mansar. In the book containing the list of patients, Gurudev wrote, "It is my prime belief that selfless service never goes in vain." Milk used to be brought from nearby villages for the use of patients. One day, the same was delayed. The patients kept on asking for milk to Parvati Ben, who was in charge of the female ward. Since nutritious milk was essential for freshly operated patients, Parvati Bain approached Pragji Bhai, who was in charge of the male ward. He went to the tea house but could obtain only half a bucketful that was left over from the morning tea. Seeing the meagre quantity, Parvati Bain expressed her annoyance. How can I manage with so little milk for about 70 patients who are operated upon today? Pragji Bhai replied, Bain, have faith, and with Gurudev's name, take up the feeding jar and commence. Meanwhile, I will see what can be done. Though Parvati Bain did not understand much, she commenced with an old lady, who took just one sip and said enough. Thus all the patients whom she approached with the milk kettle just took a sip and said enough. When Parvati Bain glanced at the milk bucket, she was pleasantly surprised to see that it still contained some milk. Amidst joyous celebrations, the camp concluded on 11th November 1957 with a tally of 2,059 operations. The Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh was of immense help during the camp. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 46. Sironj Icam. On conclusion of the camp of Mandsaur, Gurudev told the devotees to return home and said, I may go elsewhere for rest and solitude. However, he went straight to Sironj, where Avanti Bai's son-in-law was staying, and on account of that, Gurudev was known to the people. While sitting under a mango tree outside the village, he spoke to the villagers about an icam. He told everyone that they would have such a camp exactly after 1 month. One devotee, Shri Radhavlal Bhai, suggested, Babaji, let us have this camp around April so that we can provide mangoes for the patients. Gurudev smiled and said, Bhai, we cannot have an eye camp in the summer. So far as your mangoes are concerned, there they are. Go and pluck them. And he pointed towards a bunch of 3 ripe mangoes hanging from the tree. Mangoes in this cold? Seeing such a strange phenomena, even the Muslims among those present agreed to participate and assist in the camp. On 13th January 1959, when the first operation was performed, Gurudev wrote in the register of patients, the key to success lies in the concern for others. On account of Sironj formerly being under the rule of a Muslim Nawab, majority of the people were Muslims. The parda system among the women was an obstacle for them to come forward for any kind of treatment or assistance. However, some Muslims came for check-up and operation. One devotee remarked, Why do you treat the Muslims? Gurudev said with a smile, In the camp I am only a human being, though in my personal life I am a strict Hindu. He added further, All of this discrimination of caste and class is restricted only to the body. Humanity has neither form nor caste. It is not proper to distinguish one human patient from another. On the successful completion of the camp, Gurudev reverentially attended both the Satyanarayan Puja, organized by the Hindus, as well as the congregation of poets organized by the Muslims. Next day, while the camp was being dispersed, one Muslim leader addressed the fellow Muslim volunteers. Thus, the chant of Ram Nam was being chanted while helping to lift the luggage. An angel of Khuda has organized this camp. Both Ram and Rahim are the same. We see here what true and selfless devotion can do to the thinking of people of other religions. Truly, it has been said, true love conquers all. On 20th January 1959, the icam concluded with a total of 968 operations. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 47. Ramesh escapes death. When Ramesh Bhai of Anantapur showed his horoscope to an astrologer, he said, Your destiny is excellent, but in the 20th year of your life, there is a grave calamity which may result in your death. He told this dire prediction to Gurudev, who was annoyed with Ramesh for inviting worries by consulting an astrologer. He took away the horoscope and kept it with him. While Ramesh was passing through his 28th year, Gurudev happened to be in Anantapur. On that night, a snake descended from the roof of the room in which Ramesh was sleeping and coiled itself around his neck. In the morning, when his roommate saw the snake still coiled around the neck of Ramesh Bhai, he got scared and shouted for help. Ramesh, on hearing the shrill sounds, woke up and was scared, while the snake left the room through the roof. Ramesh ran to Gurudev and said, Mamaji, please help me. My throat is burning severely. A snake remained coiled around my neck through the night. Gurudev gave him a seat near him and said lovingly, Son, snakes are ornaments around Lord Shiva's throat. Now my worries about your future are over. After this incident, none can kill you even by stones. Go ahead, get married and enjoy the rest of your life. For the inflammation and skin irritation around the throat, Gurudev gave him some medicine. Thus the serpent, who had come to bite Ramesh Bhai, had his mouth as though stitched up by Gurudev's grace, and Ramesh Bhai escaped its bite and sure death. If God be for us, who can be against us? Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 48. Jagdalpur Icam. After Sironj, it was decided to hold the camp at Jagdalpur, which is about 200 miles from the Raipur station and on the border of Orissa. The Adivasis there are of dark complexion and scantily clad, and earn their livelihood by hunting with bows and arrows. They are accustomed to a crude diet. The devotees were amazed at their primitive habits and dietary preferences. On account of their ignorance of the language spoken by the volunteers, the devotees found it difficult to communicate with them. Prakshi Bhai and Dana Bhai would go around the villages explaining in sign language that a saint had come among them to correct their eyesights by mantra tantra, and he would also give them food, which added as a further incentive. After a lot of persuasion, a few people agreed to come for treatment. The operations were commenced on the 10th of March 1958. In each camp there used to be a separate ward for mental patients. Here too there was such a ward. One night an insane patient caused a lot of trouble. When he was tied to a cot to prevent him from hurting his own freshly operated eyes, Gurudev entered the mental ward and said, He is an addict and needs opium. Let someone go and fetch a little to pacify him. Meanwhile the disturbed patient was given a cup of tea. He took a sip and spat it out towards Gurudev. Finally, when opium was obtained, the insane addict was given a little, and thus pacified, he at last went to sleep. On the day of the concluding ceremony, some Christian missionary nuns came to Gurudev and left after having darshan. This area, like all backward areas, was a favorite ground for the conversion to Christianity. Gurudev told that he had purposely organized the camp in this area to counter this influence of conversion because it was harmful to Hinduism. He said, For conversion of these backward brethren of ours to Christianity, we alone are responsible, because initially we have neglected them. No one wishes to come and work in these remote places, but after conversion to Christianity and obtaining higher education, when the self-same Adivasi becomes an officer, we respect him. Therefore, it is our duty to provide relief and succor for these unfortunate people in the form of food, clothing, medicines, and proper opportunities for education. This is the only way to guard our ancient religion and culture. A total of 1,658 operations were performed in the Jagdalpur camp. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 49. The Initiation of Jasabhai. In Jasabhai's life, there was no scope for anything else except the game of football. On the other hand, his best friend, Ravji Bhai, liked the company of religiously inclined people, and occasionally he took Jasabhai along with him to listen to bhajans. Once, when he had thus accompanied Ravji Bhai, merely out of idle curiosity, the atmosphere of total serenity and peace that he found there cast a spell on Jasabhai's mind. His visits to bhajan mandalis increased, and at times he felt so attached to such places that he would be reluctant to return home. Finally, both the friends resolved to obtain formal diksha from a well-known and acknowledged saint. To select the name of their future guru, both wrote names of three different saints on pieces of paper, and after prayers before their deity at home, Jasabhai opened the paper which he had picked out of the three. The name of Ranchoddasji Maharaj was written there. He rushed to the house of Ravji Bhai, who was also to undertake a similar exercise simultaneously. Before Jasabhai could utter a word, Ravji Bhai showed him the piece of paper drawn by him from among the three names, and there was the self-same name of Pujya Shri. The friends embraced with joy and decided to obtain the kanthi from Gurudev, and they believed that if their decision had the divine sanction, their Gurudev would come to Rajkot within 8 days. Exactly on the 8th day, Pujyashri reached Rajkot, and on hearing this, both of them ran towards his ashram. Before they could utter a word, Gurudev said, "So, you have come. Let us meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow." Both overcome with joy at the thought that Bapu knew everything. After formally tying the kanthi, Pujya Shri advised, "Be consistent and regular in your religious routine and never let the kanthi slip away from your neck. Shri Ram is your chosen deity. Worship him at all times. Lead a simple life and do not accumulate wealth beyond your needs." He added, "The rules of Diksha are hard to follow. Yet I do not wish to see my disciples ignoring the right precepts, because a Gurudev who overlooks and condones the shortcomings of his disciples is virtually blind. After 1 year, I will give you the supreme mantra." When Gurudev came again, after 1 year, after the ceremonial havan, they were given the mantra Raj. Jasabhai says, "Gurudev showered his benign grace on me, and despite my atheist way of life, made me full of faith and firm religious belief, and therefore I prostrate myself unto his divine self." Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 50. My First Meeting with Gurudev. On the sacred day of Dev Diwali, on 20th November 1958, I was awaiting Gurudev's arrival on the platform at Bombay Central Station. It was around 2 p.m., and my eagerness knew no bounds as I waited for his arrival with rose flowers, wrapped in green leaves to protect them from being withered. Since time passes very slowly when one is waiting with expectation, I glanced around and saw hundreds of people, each busy in their own way. As the train approached, I felt myself turning inwards, and the picture of Gurudev started taking shape in my vivid imagination. While I was looking ahead, Pujya Shri alighted from the train. Even from such a distance, I felt myself spellbound. Is this the same great man, with a lustrous face, about 5 feet 3 inches in height, with coppery skin, leaning slightly forward, with a frail body and a magnetic personality? He was attired in a white dhoti, half jacket, and a pair of chappals and a handkerchief in his hand. As if representing his saintly personality, everything on him was spotlessly white. There played on his compassionate face a winning smile, lighting up his personality and face. It appeared to me that his eyes could convey messages of love and adoration even through the glasses on his face. Can a man have the capacity to radiate so much sweetness and divine love through a mere smile? The devotees rushed towards him. With garlands draped around his neck, he could speak a few words to one, put a fond hand on another's head, or merely with a glance acknowledge the presence of some others. as though the flowers in my hands were impatient to be offered at his feet. My doubted mind started wondering, how will I ever be able to approach him amidst this unprecedented crowd of devotees? Will my flowers be able to reach his sacred feet? Thus I oscillated alternatively between hope, doubt, and despair. Before my mind could go any further, Gurudev saw me, and making his way through the dense crowd, he came and stood right in front of me. The flowers finally reached their destination as I bowed my head in reverence at his feet. I thought such a benign personality should have the adjective Antaryami, the one who knows another's mind. He was scheduled to stay overnight at the Ram Mahal and then leave for the Shivani icam on the next day. While at the station, I heard the work of doctors, nurses, and service-minded devotees. Volunteers were being enrolled for the icam, and they were to catch the train for Shivani the next day. I had an irrepressible urge to attend the icam, and after obtaining permission from Bapuji, I joined the group of devotees going to Shivani. Jai Bhagwan.
Sarve Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukhamapnuyat.